So I remember seeing all those things, and I never thought about it till just now when you were talking, that the visual part of leadership, we know the emotional part of leadership, which I will definitely answer your question on that. But what I don't think sometimes people realize is, yes, I do believe leadership is a gifting and a calling and, talent and so on that I've been blessed with. But there's also the responsibility of how you carry it, right? Not what you say, not what you intend, what you hope, but how do you carry it when you walk into a room? Right. And so anyways, I could go a million directions in that, but I just wanted to bring it up when you said it. I never thought of it, and it kind of clicked.
Welcome to the EQ Gangster podcast, where you will learn practical tools to grow your mental and emotional health and intelligence to be the best version of yourself, both at work and at home. It is real, raw, and transformational. The journey of emotional growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. I believe in you. This episode is sponsored by Arrowhead Leadership Consulting. What are your organization's biggest pain points right now? Low EQ leaders, weak managers, toxic culture, high turnover, low engagement, leader development, lagging behind company growth, no company career path. Let us know if your organization needs leadership coaching, workshops, training, or keynotes. Visit arrowhead-leadership.com for more details. Arrowhead-leadership.com.
Hey there. I was like, I have to know who this EQ gangster is. I was like, what?
Yes, ma'am.
I was like, I thought that you were in Dallas. I heard you were in Dallas. And I was like, tell them I will even go to his podcast place, because I was like, this I gotta see.
Yes, ma'am. I saw you in Dallas. I'd love to do lunch or coffee with you sometime.
Yeah. Well, I did. I was like, because I told him, I was like, oh, let's see if he's like in my neck of the woods. I would go do if you had a podcast studio, I was like, I'll just go meet him, But yeah, we were all, I will tell you, all of us were like, it was the PR team and my team, and we're all like, EQ gangster. I was like, is it gangster with an ER or gangster with an A?
That's awesome. I love it.
It's so nice to meet you. It's so nice to meet you.
You too, ma'am. You too. I'm so excited to interview you and learn some great skitty from you.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, super excited. So the name, it's so funny that you dig that, because so I've got some 30-year-old friends that are much younger than me, and he's Hawaiian and she's Black.
Oh, okay.
And she's a Black Rican, right? She's right. So
Wait, what's a Black Rican?
She's Black and Dominican.
Okay. Oh, I was thinking Puerto Rican, like Black.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yeah. That's true.
Okay.
That's true. So she's Black and Dominican, and so there's some of our closest friends, and so I had to rebrand, and because I started out EQ for entrepreneurs, and he said, man, Noble, he's like, I tell all my homies that you're the gangster of EQ. He's like, how many big, bald, bearded, tattooed airborne rangers are talking about emotional intelligence? I said, probably not too many. He's like, dude, you're the EQ gangster. I'm like, I love it.
Well, I think it's so unique and it resonated so well. And when we were all, and even so a guy who works on my team, he's my head of growth and strategy. And he goes, so we're literally this, like you were a topic of this whole conversation. And so all of us, we've got the PR team, we've got my team, and so there's a bunch of us on this call. And so now I'm curious. I'm like, all right, I literally says a gangster with an ER gangster, right? So we're looking it up. And then I'm looking, I was like, oh my God. And literally most of the people on the call, except for my one guy, we're all women, right? All different races, but we're all women. And then there's Ryan. So they're like, he looks like Ryan. Ryan's on the call. Ryan goes, I was thinking the same thing. Like he looks like a cousin of mine or something, right? So then I'm like, well, where is he located? So people are Googling. And then one of the girls goes, well, wait, is he in Missouri? And Ryan lives in Missouri. And Ryan goes, if he lives in Missouri, there's a problem, because I think we're related, or maybe he's like my brother or something. So my mom's got some explaining to do. And they're like, no, he's in Dallas. I was like, I'm in Dallas, right? So I said, awesome. He looks like some of my friends who are all like former SEALs, and they got the beard, they got the whole thing going on. And I was like, that's what he looks like to me. And I was like, I already like him.
That's awesome. I love it. That's great.
So you were in the military?
Yes, ma'am. So
Nice.
I was in the Army a long time ago, and I was just looking through your book, page
Hmm.
49. You
Okay.
have so I went to West Point,
Oh,
and
nice.
it says
Yes.
you have a cousin that went to West Point.
Yes, exactly. And she was a black woman, so it wasn't a whole lot of those at that time
Right,
going by.
right.
Yeah,
When did
yeah.
she graduate? What year?
Oh God, that I don't even know. I'm trying to even guess because when I went to see her, I was really young, like really young.
Oh, okay,
Yeah. And
okay.
so it would have been like 20, 30 years ago. You know what I mean? Like a long time
Okay,
ago.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So she's but she lives, well, she doesn't live in Dallas. She used to live in Austin. And now she and her husband, they're both West Point grads. But
Wow.
they live, I think they work for like Ford or GM or something. So they live
Wow.
in Michigan. Yeah, yeah.
Now
So
how old would she be? Ballpark.
she's younger than me, so I'm 60, so she's probably like
You, you're 60?
I am. I always have to say that because people assume which praise God, like they assume I'm younger. So I'm always like, yeah, I got a 35-year-old, okay, right?
You are
But thank you.
amazing.
Thank you for that response there, Noble.
Oh my God. Wow.
So when I say it was a long time ago, it was a long time ago that I was at West Point. But I want to say she's probably 10 years younger than me. So it's probably just coming into the 50 age, you know?
Okay,
Hmm.
if you know her name, she may be my
Yeah.
classmate.
No, wait. So her name would have been, because she's married now, but her name would have been Lolita Stubblefield. And yeah, that would have been her maiden name. And Lolita,
Okay.
Lolita, Lolita. But
Okay.
she's a black woman. And yeah, and there when I was on campus, I was like, there ain't a lot of you on, like,
Right. That's right.
you know.
That's right.
So yeah, yeah. But
Okay,
that's who it is.
so now it's Lolita Davis.
Yes. And her husband, Ron Davis, also graduated from West Point. So I don't know if
Ron
he was the
Davis.
same year as her or a year above or that I don't know. But I know I met him at West Point with her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Isn't
awesome.
that crazy?
Because I'm telling you, we may have been at school at this because I'm 51.
Okay. So
And
then you're
so
probably, yeah.
yeah, I'm U group 96. So we may have
Okay.
been there at the same time.
For sure, for sure, absolutely. And I'm guessing she's 10 years younger than me. She might be
Okay.
even less. So within that 4 years, you guys probably overlapped
Right.
for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
great. That's great.
yeah.
What a small world. That's
I
super
know, right?
cool. That's super dope. Okay. So Stephanie, so
Mhm.
you've been so how long have you been like a gangster leader? Like have you always been from the rip? You just like tell me your
Yeah,
journey.
tell you, Jar. Okay, so I always start at the beginning, which I am an aviation professional, but I was an Air Force brat. So
Okay.
I grew up hearing planes take off and land my whole life because I was that military kid that we moved every 2 years of my life, and so we'd always go on active Air Force bases. So I knew I wanted to be in aviation. I didn't know what I could do in aviation because back in the day, if I'm talking now, let's see, 50, almost 50 years ago, or 40 years ago. And so back then, it was if you were a man, you were a pilot, you know what I mean? And if you were a woman, you were a flight attendant. It's very clear, what roles you're supposed to have. But none of those pictures ever looked like me, Noble, right? So though I knew what I wanted to do, I didn't know what was accessible to me because I'd never seen a person of color depicted in TV, film, magazines, nothing like that as an aviator, right? So I didn't know what I didn't know. That said, I started off checking luggage and parking planes and doing customer service at the airport at Boston Logan Airport, literally 40 years ago. That's what was my very first job in aviation, starting at the very bottom. Then I got recruited from the aviation, one of the CEO, or not CEO, he was a VP. He said to me, he goes, Steph, every time, and he worked for the airline. He goes, every time I come to this airport, I see you smiling, serving customers. I think we have you in the wrong position. I think you should be in sales, not in operations. And I was like, okay, I didn't know anything about sales, but I trusted him. Got into sales, sold for the airlines for many years, then got recruited from the airlines into private aviation. And then at that point, I, sold private aviation. Then I got promoted to lead the private aviation team. And then from there, I, became a president of a company, first Black person in U.S. history to run a private jet company. And then from there, moved into becoming an officer, helped take one of the companies public, became an officer of Wheels Up, which is one of the largest private jet companies. And now I serve on a board that we are creating a brand new aircraft that will come out probably in 28, 29. And it's the first aircraft that will have the takeoff and landing like a helicopter, but actually be a private jet. So I serve on the XTI advisory board for that. So there's the story. So in regards to leadership, I've been leading a long time, but you know what? I think it's such a great question that you're asking me, but I will tell you, Noble, and you can appreciate this because you're a military man, moving around so much, that's all I knew. So I had to always adjust, right? My adaptability is probably like yours. It's off the chain, right? I can adapt very quickly because I'm always the new kid or always the person who has to adjust or make new friends or whatever. And so I think that helped shape my leadership because as a little kid, if I didn't really quickly assess the situation and adapt, I'd have no friends, right? So that kind of lifestyle helped me, I believe, greatly. I'm super grateful for it. And then also growing up, I always tell people this, I grew up around excellence. I grew up on military bases. And so all I saw were people who were perfectly fit, who were getting more done by 6 a.m. than most of us do all day. You don't see sloppy soldiers, right? They've got their hair is cut, their shoes are shined, their pants are creased. It's just like you're watching excellence. As a little girl, I'm seeing excellence in everything I'm looking at. And I'm walking with my dad, and he's either saluting people or people saluting him. It's cause and effect, it's order, it's command. So your question is a good question, and I hadn't really thought of it. But I think that my leadership, how I saw leadership, started as a little girl living on military bases. And then I grew into it. But what I saw was excellence is the standard, right? That's what we're doing here. We're doing excellence. And so if you're going to lead or if you're going to be on my team, I demand excellence because that's what I grew up seeing. And, kudos to you for serving us. We got the best forces arguably in the world, right? But it's not because we kind of have to go at it. Like we know exactly what we're doing and there's excellence along the way. So that's why I'm incredibly grateful for the childhood that I had.
Amazing. Okay, so this is kind of an offshoot of that previous question, and that's I love that how being surrounded by excellence was like your first imprint on leadership. For leadership. Mm-hmm. So at what point of that journey did you discover? So my podcast writes on emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. When did you become self-aware that, oh snap, okay, I've got, Second Timothy on my tattoos here, Second Timothy chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. Mm-hmm. This tattoo on my left hand is a gift that's on fire. So verse 6 is fan into flame the gift that God has given you. Verse 7, for he has not given you a spirit of timidity or fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. So at what point in your journey did you become aware? So you got the excellence piece, but that snap, I think God's given me some leadership skills. When did you discover that gift and how did you start to fan it into flames?
Nice. Good question. And so, by the way, are we recording? We just shooting the breeze now.
No. We're recording.
We're recording. Okay.
Oh, yes, ma'am. We're
I was going to go much deeper. Okay. It's good to know. It's good to know, Noble. You want to ask me the first question again? All right. Okay. So now let me get serious. Okay. So, gosh, you know what? It's such a good question. Here's what I will tell you. When I got my first leadership role, like technically got the first role, because I do believe as I was growing up as a little kid, I would always by default kind of take, if I saw something that if somebody needed to step in the role of take charge, like, here's how we're going to play on this playground, right? I was that kid, okay? But fast forward as an adult, what was really interesting is when I got my very first leadership job, I called my father who was a master sergeant in the U.S. Air Force, and I really wanted to do the job well, right? So because I also, as a little girl, watched him be a leader, and I knew the responsibility that came with it. So I called my dad, and I was like, Dad, they've just promoted me, and I really want to do a good job. And what would you recommend I focus in on? And he gave me two pieces of advice that I still lead this way to this day.
Oh, okay. How old were you at this time?
I was, gosh, 20 something, maybe 20, I don't even know, 25, 26, 27, like around that age.
So mid 20s, you got that first leadership position. Okay. And then your dad told you these two things. Okay, go ahead.
Exactly. And the two things that he said to me, Noble, were always know there's two sides to every story and always protect your team. Those were the two pieces of advice. Now, when you think about always protect your team, obviously from a military perspective, this is a man that had fought in wars and stuff. So I'd say that carries a lot of weight, right? But always know there's two sides to every story. So fast forward, as a leader, anyone who's ever worked with me will tell you, oh yeah, she's serious about those 2 points, right? If you have an issue with one of your colleagues, do not come in my office and tell me about it, because I don't want to hear it. You need to have at least talked to the colleague and the two of you sort it out. If you can't, the two of you can come to my office and now the three of us can talk about it and get it all figured out. But that's how I see, because you are on teams that I've led, the very first conversation I have with the team is, on this team, we are going to be our brother and sister's keeper. That's how this team's going to work. And either we're going to all win together or we're going to all lose together, but it's our choice. Right. So I set the stage at the very beginning. That's my very first talk I ever have with any team that I'm overseeing. And that way they all know, like, okay, like I do have to care about what's going on with you and what's going on with you. Think of the military, right? Like you're not a lone ranger out there. Like there's a whole team. And that's what I saw as a little girl. And my father reinstilled it to me. Now, the second part, always protect your team. I'll tell you a story, and I share this story often. I might even share it in the book. I don't think I shared it in the book. But I remember having, and being in the private jet side, you're talking about big dollars, right? And so I remember always telling my team, listen, when you go, if you're doing a proposal for a customer, it's okay if you have your sales support person put the proposal together, that's fine. But you, as the VP of sales or the sales director, you have to look at it first before it goes out to the customer, right? That was the rule, hands down. I never stuttered about that. Everybody knows what the rules are. So this particular time, we had a sales director and he was having to run to go catch a flight. So his sales support person created the proposal. He never looked at it because he was running for a flight. The proposal goes out, it's wrong, and it's going to cost, it's a $325,000 mistake, okay? And the customer is holding our feet to the fire. So as you can imagine, word spreads very quickly in the office, like, oh my gosh, we just went up, this proposal's all wrong. The customer's holding us to it. It's going to cost us $325,000 on top of everything else, right? So the word gets to my CEO, and rightfully so, he's furious, okay? So he comes to me and he says, who did this? And he's like, I can remember it to this day. Veins are popping out of his neck. Noble. He's like super red. And I'm like, I think he's going to this is not a good scene. And I'm standing there getting the blowback because the guy who caused all this is on a plane. And so I'm standing there, getting screamed at. And he's like, who did it? Who did it? And I could have said the person's name who did it, but I didn't. And so I said to my CEO, I said, listen, on my team, we have a process. The process wasn't followed. And so as far as you're concerned, I did it. And, you would think that was a very noble, and he'd think like, oh, good for you. No, he just made it matter, Noble, okay? I thought I was going to die that day. And so what he said to me is he got louder and more frustrated. And he's like, you don't write proposals. I know you didn't do it. You're the head of the team. Like, you don't write a proposal. And he's right. I would have never written a proposal at that level. And so, but I didn't give up the person's name. And the reason why I didn't give up the person's name is I was going to handle it. Certainly, the person still made a mistake. Trust me, I was madder probably than he was, right? But that's not the point. I always remember what my father said, always protect your team. And so the process wasn't followed. Certainly, I would have the conversation with my teammate, but that was a small example. If not, I could have thrown him under the bus and people would have absolutely understood why. But that's the point of leadership, right? You do the uncomfortable, you do the tough stuff. And so I learned that by watching my father and every other soldier that I was around, growing up my entire life on active Air Force bases.
Wow, what a story of living out those principles. That is amazing. That's amazing. So it seems like, man, you're the foundation that your family and father gave you with the excellence imprint, and then those other two. Well, and I would even argue the leadership imprint, because you said even as a young kid, as a young girl, you would, on the playground, right? Hey guys, this is how we're going to roll.
Yeah.
I would imagine that some of that is just being, I mean, some of that obviously is how God made you, right? I'm sure some of those gifts, right? But also, like, you got to actually see, like, in the flesh, live, breathe, sleep, eat with a leader, a real life leader, and what that looks like and what it sounds like and smells like, and all the different things. And man, talk about setting you up. And so, okay, so what do you feel like in your journey of leading at the highest levels of organizations? What has been one or two of the most challenging lessons that you've had to learn?
So, you know what? I'm going to write the two most challenging lessons in leadership in general that you're thinking about.
So leadership and your emotional journey.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, before I get into that, I wanted to say something, because when I was listening to you talk, I thought, I've never thought of it this way, but we're going to go down this road together, Noble. And you being a military man, you'll totally understand where I'm coming from. You're right. When I was a little girl, I saw leadership everywhere that I turned, right? Like, I just saw it because I of the upbringing that I had as a military brat. But one step further that I never thought about till just this moment is the thing, and you know this, when you've got, there's two things. When you're on a military base, some people may not know this, as a military child, you're not the one held responsible, it's your parent. So if I'm a teenager and I'm speeding on base, then the person who gets called into the office, who gets in trouble, is not me, it's my father, right? So you learn cause and effect very quickly, right? You learn consequences. Like, no matter what you do, there's a consequence, good or bad, but you're driving this whole thing. So that was one thing. And then the other thing is, you also see when certain military people that were of really high status were coming on the base, how the whole base got adjusted for this person. And I remember seeing, and I don't know what star general she was, but she was a woman. I remember this. And I was a teenage girl, working on base at the exchange. And she came through with all the ribbons and stars and, like, just the whole uniform. And I remember visually seeing that, thinking, just her walking in, the whole place was like the whole base. She just commanded such presence. And I remember what that instilled in me as a young girl, at the time as a teenager. But that kind of grace that she had all the power on that base. Like, there was no question she was the most powerful person on that base. And yet she was so kind and so gracious, and and with all this stars and stripes and everything she had with her uniform. I remember as a young person, not leading anything, like I was working, I think, at the deli or something, but I just remember thinking, man, that's power, and how she carried it, right? With such grace and such dignity. She knew she had the power, and yet she kept giving it away every single conversation she had to somebody else. So I remember seeing all those things, and I never thought about it till just now when you were talking, that the visual part of leadership, we know the emotional part of leadership, which I will definitely answer your question on that. But what I don't think sometimes people realize is, yes, I do believe leadership is a gifting and a calling and, talent and so on that I've been blessed with. But there's also the responsibility of how you carry it. Right? Not what you say, not what you intend, what you hope, but how do you carry it when you walk into a room? Right. And so, anyways, I could go a million directions in that, but I just wanted to bring it up when you said it. I never thought of it, and it kind of clicked.
Love it. Love it. And you're so right. And I would even argue, and obviously I don't know who that general was, but like, I think that, so I just saw a clip, about the concept of Jesus, and a word that is often mistaken or misunderstood about, I think it's controlled power, right? Which is meek.
Yes, yes.
Meekness is controlled power. It doesn't mean weak. A lot of us think, oh, meek is weak. No, no, no.
Yeah.
Meek is controlled power. And I think that I feel like leaders like this general that you got to see, I feel like her meekness amplified her power and presence.
Say that again for the people in the back. Amen.
Right? Would you agree?
100% agree.
Okay.
100%. Yeah. And that's so powerful, right? Because at the end of the day, you're right. Meekness is incredibly powerful. And a lot of times people misunderstand the word, but that's what she displayed. And so as a little girl or as a young girl at that point, I am very mindful of that, right? That when I walk into the room, especially if I come off stage or anything like that, right? If I'm on a board, I'm on stage, I have the power. But when I walk into a room, I know I probably have most of the power in that room. But that lady, who I don't even remember what her name was, showed me what that kind of grace is like. She would never know any of this. She probably doesn't remember ever meeting me, but it's just how you carry yourself, how it can have a ripple effect. And that it's amazing how God can show you something that you don't even realize he's shown you until like literally, I didn't think about that story until you were talking just now. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's the visual side of leadership that we actually don't think about, but it leaves an imprint on people as well.
Right. That's right. Well, and I do a lot of executive coaching and I'm in a lot of companies and a lot work with from the junior brand new leaders to the C-suite folks. And, I'm in the military. I take it for granted, right? Like I feel like privates are more exposed to leadership than many civilians ever have been.
100%.
Right. And so, because privates are, even though the privates are not in a position of leadership like you, they're surrounded by it. So like they're seeing, and obviously the military is not always good leadership. There's obviously examples of bad leadership too. But the military is a leadership laboratory. Like you are surrounded by leadership, and there's just so much value, like you're saying, in just the visual, the immersion into leadership language, right? Like Spanish or whatever the culture is. And it's so powerful. And okay, so now we can kind of hit your great ally stuff, because I think it's a great segue. Your ally leadership is real, so not to try to preach anybody, but like 1 Corinthians 12, right, talks about the different gifts that he's given us. 1 Corinthians 12 and Romans 12, and that we all have, one part of the body can't say to this part of the body that I don't need you, right? The eye needs the nose and the ears need the, mouth, all that stuff. And just like your ally leadership, it's like you can't have a team of a bunch of noses.
No.
Right. Or a bunch of ears or a bunch of eyes.
Right.
Like we need the whole body, right?
Yes.
We need the elbow, we need the kneecap, we need the eyebrows. Like we need everything. Yes. And if God made us all, like, okay, well, how can I maximize and optimize this team that God has given me the stewardship with? How do I maximize that? So can you elaborate on your ally leadership concept?
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I love it for a lot of reasons. So the book is called Ally Leadership, How to Lead People Who Are Not Like You. And ally is an acronym, right? So ally stands for ask, listen, learn, you take action. So that's how because I could have called the book Allyship, but I didn't. I called it Ally Leadership because I want leaders to get into the habit of ask, listen, learn, and then you take action. That's how you lead people who are not like you. Because here's what the deal is. You're 100% right. This is the new level of leadership. And I'm so incredibly passionate about this. And I do believe, since we're talking about the Lord and I'm a woman of faith, that my entire upbringing led me to this moment. Because I was always around people who were not like me. I moved every 2 years of my life. always the new kid, always having to make new friends, always having to be, make the new teacher. It was, my whole life was literally being the person who needed to adapt, right? To people who are not like me. And so what I want leaders to realize now is that here's what's going on in the workforce. We've got 6 generations at work, which is unheard of. So they're from 16 to 75 years old. We know that a Gen Z, a Zoomer, doesn't think like a boomer, right? And everything in between. So every leader, every company, every industry is dealing with this intergenerational situation because they work differently, they have different expectations, perspectives, et cetera. The second part of the scenario for today's modern workforce is the fact that women are the majority of the population here in our country and almost globally as well. So what does that mean? Well, women see things differently, we communicate differently, we lead differently. So that changes the dynamics at work. Then we have all the ethnic demographics changing, right? Every ethnic race is growing, non-ethnic race shrinking. So that changes the dynamics. Then we have LGBTQ plus, people with neurodiversity, people with physical disabilities. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, right? So all of us as leaders, no matter who you are, you will lead people who are not like you. So the question is, how do you do it? Now, that said, what I don't like to have conversations about, because I think it's exhausting and people, you can just go look it up, right? Is diverse teams, and I don't mean diverse in race and gender, because I think society has dumbed it down to that. Diverse just means not like you, right? So that means they may think differently, have a different schooling, different background, different life, experience, right? Different communication style, different. So if you put diversity in the sense of someone who's not like you, it can be, I could have someone who looks exactly like me and be completely different than me, right? Because we think differently, So diversity is diversity of thought as well. So when we think of leadership, which I do believe it's a huge responsibility, and I think as a leader, I will be accountable one day. I will answer to my Lord on how I led his most prized possession, which happens to be human beings. So that said, the way I look at leadership is very intentional, okay? So with that in mind, every leader is going to have to know how to lead all of God's children. Every race, every creed, every gender. That's the job. This is no longer a discussion about if you don't like somebody, they're going to go away. That's not happening. That train's left, okay? So you will lead people who are not like you if you want to remain a relevant leader. Now, if you don't, keep doing what you're doing. But if you do, right, then there's some things that you're going to have to level up with. And that's what this book is about. It's not about passing shame or guilt or anything like that. It's like, hey, I came from an all male, all white, high net worth industry. None of that stuff was I. I was a military kid. I didn't grow up around wealth, right? I'm not a man. Everything that I'm the opposite of, I was emerged in that industry. And not only did I survive it and do well, I went to the highest level. Right? So it can be done, but you have to come into it with a certain kind of attitude and spirit about it. That's why you ask questions you don't know the answer to, right? And then you listen and you learn. And by default, when you ask and you listen and you learn, now you have a responsibility to do something with that. And that's why the you take action is super important. We don't just need you aware, we need you activated, right? And so that's what ally leadership is all about. And so when I think of going back, since you and I are talking biblical perspective, I always tell people this is not a DEI conversation. This is an ROI conversation, right? I am an executive in the marketplace. So I'm not talking about doing things because it's the right thing to do. I'm talking about doing things because it's the most profitable, smart way to do it, right? That's the job. And so when you look at diverse teams, the stats are clear. Look up Harvard, Deloitte, McKinsey, statistics are clear. Diverse teams are 35% more productive. Diverse teams outperform traditional teams. Diverse teams have a 70% increase in just grabbing new market. Why? Because they're all different, right? You know what I mean? And probably the stat that I love the most is diverse teams are 36% more profitable. I could go on and on and on and rattle off stats. So I don't need to argue the point of whether diverse teams are good or bad. They just outperform, period. And your job as a leader is to get the right people in the right place to get the right result. That is your fiscal responsibility, whether you're leading in corporate or you're leading a nonprofit. Your job is to be fiscally responsible and to get a return, right? So that means I've got to get the best talent in order to produce the best result. And it just shows research wise, based on facts, that it's going to be people who are not like you who are going to set you up to win in that scenario as a leader. I could go on and on, but I'll stop there.
Well, that's awesome. I absolutely love it, Stephanie. I think that's fire. And I love the stewardship concept, right? It's like how do we steward our leadership roles well? And I would say, I mean, go back to one of your beginning points, because that's something that God's having me been chewing on a lot too, is not just well, but with excellence. How do we lead with excellence? I don't want to lead mediocre. I want to lead world class, right? And there's tons that I still have to grow in. And so, how do we do that with those diverse teams? And like you shared, a lot of people, it's so, I say funny, it's not funny, it's interesting, fascinating, funny that many people are struggling from my perspective. Now, this is super anecdotal, so this is not based on research, but I feel like, based on my experience of probably the 20, 30 companies that we're working with in my portfolio, is the generational gaps is a really tough, from the boomers and the X's trying to interact with those Zoomers and millennials. It's like, Martians and, Pluto people, like it's right. And so helping these, anyway, so I love that ally, ask, listen, learn, and then you take action, I think is so great. Because at the end of the day, like, another thing too, it's like, again, even if they look like you, because it's something a lot of, right, I love, let's see, page 23, you have on your book, questions to reveal unknown biases that might affect our decision-making processes. And the reality is, we all have them. Right? All of us. It's not like, oh, well, just, I'm a great leader, so I don't have any bias. No. We all, la-di-da-di, everybody has biases. And a lot of people looking at me, there's a couple biases that, that my mom raised me speaking Spanish, so I can speak Spanish. Right. Nice. But looking at me, like, there's no way you would ever guess that. Right. Number one. Number two is, I have African family. Not Black family, African family, right? Like my brother-in-law is from Ghana, right? And which trips out, it trips out a lot of folks would not, think about that, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then my other brother-in-law is from Germany. Anyway, so I'm kind of a United Nations family, and I think another blessing is, with some of these biases, is that, go back to the military, is that one of the blessings of the military is, you want to talk about probably one of the most diverse companies, organizations in the world, is the military, right? You have every single shade of color, of culture, of right. And so, and in the military, like, it just is, like, you just are used to it. Other organizations, right, in the civilian world, that's not as commonplace, right? So go ahead.
I always say, in the military, at least this has been my experience, but you tell me what yours is. In the military, growing up, because all of my friends were from different countries and people lived all over the place, and that's just kind of how you didn't know any differently. That's just how it was, right? And in the military, I found, as a military child, that people didn't care as much whether you were Black and white. They cared whether you were military or civilian. That's what they cared about. Are you part of us, or you're not part of us, right? And that was the fine line. Like, oh, the military kids. Oh, versus, it wasn't so much like the race stuff. It was more, are you civilian or are you military?
Yeah, right? Absolutely. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. 100%. Yeah, I love it. Love it. And so, and I understand that our, here's a bias, right? Is that we are, as humans, tribal.
Yeah.
Right. Like we do like to hang out with people. Like, you go to another country, as soon as you hear, let's say, well, I was in Spain. This was a while ago, but 10, 15 years ago, I was in Spain. And like, you hear someone speaking English, it's like, you immediately run up, oh, hey, what's up? Where are you from? In the States, right? And so you gravitate towards, like, if you will, or similarities, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you got a military background. Oh, cool. Where'd you, right?
Yep.
So whatever that may be, okay, what has been, so as again, from you've been C-suite, what brings you the most fulfillment as a leader?
Easy answer for me is watching my other people that I've developed, watching them thrive and watching them now lead and lead in a way of that is above how most people lead, right? Because most people really, unless you've got, let's say, a military background or you were blessed enough to have a leader that really understood the assignment, most people trip into leadership and then they try to figure out along the way. And there's some good that comes out of that, and there's a lot of bad that comes out of that, because if you don't know, you don't know. And so, so I think one of the reasons why I'm so passionate, and maybe you as well, about helping leaders really get a handle on this thing called leadership is because it can be a lonely place. It can be really exhausting and exhilarating. It can be, trying and a lot of pressure. And so I've been there. Every level of the leadership game, I've been there. And so how can I give back to the leaders to, encourage them and support them and all that good stuff? But when I think of just leadership in general, and especially when I think of ally leadership, I want leaders to realize that sometimes what happens when we think of diversity, you're right, in the military, I'm sure there's issues still there, but certainly not about like what we usually see in corporate America. And what I find is that most people, I always say this is a head and heart issue. It's head and heart, right? Head wise, there's the basics. There's bias, there's unconscious bias for tribal, all that stuff. Sometimes it gets the bad rap. Sometimes biases are actually good for us, right? So not all biases are bad. And so, and you've read my book, I spend a lot of time on the front end with the science behind why we do certain things, because that way people can kind of get rid of any type of woe was me philosophy and realize, well, your brain's actually kind of hardwired into this. So some stuff you're not going to overcome, but there's different ways to address it. So my point, I'll give you an example. We think of when the brain sees a face, right? So whether it's on a picture or up front in person, whatever, the brain's job, one of its jobs is to protect us. So the minute it sees a face, it's going to stick that face, that person, into either you're in my in group or you're my out group, right? In group means you're like me. Out group means you're not like me. And it's doing it not because it's trying to be, like stereotypical. It's doing it because the brain's doing a lot of stuff. So part of the brain can sometimes be a little lazy, like, okay, I don't have a whole lot of time to spend on this. So you're in my out group, right? And then it's moving on. Now, we can't change that natural instinct. That probably helped keep us alive because we are tribal, right? And once upon a time. But we know now that same feature, not necessarily the best thing we got going for us, but you're not going to override that instinctive. It's literally hardwired into your brain. But what you can do is to feed the brain more information, because it's just a predictive machine. So I feed it more information, it now will make different decisions. Well, how do I do that? Well, how I can do that is to start expanding my in group, right? I can start to get familiar and more comfortable with people who are not like me. So when the brain sees somebody who's not like me, it's not so quick to go, you're in my out group. But instead, because I've made that someone not like me more familiar, now the brain will go, oh, okay, well, you're my in group. Like, actually, you're very similar to me. And you may not physically be similar to me, but you're similar to me in other kind of ways, right? So that's a way that you can override your natural instinct in a way that will be helpful for you as a leader. Because we all come into leadership with our own life lived experience. And so therefore we have our own preconceived notions on how we see the world. But the best thing you can do to try to attract and attach yourself to people who are not like you is you've got to learn how to ask those questions. And you've got to come in not necessarily just from an empathetic perspective, though that's important. But I'm not using that word as much anymore, Noble, because what I find is when you say, oh, you should be an empathetic leader, people are like, it just feels very warm and fuzzy. And that's not where I'm going for, right? What I always say is, yes, you should have empathy for human beings in general, but that's a different conversation, right? But really what I'm looking for leaders to do is you need to be a curious leader. Because if you're curious, then you're going to ask questions that you don't know the answer to because you're curious, right? You don't know the answer. So curiosity is, I'm more focused on that. And the secondary is then if you're curious enough and you can start hearing, things from a different lens and not put your defenses up. Well, now you're going to be courageous when you start to act, right? You've got to have curiosity and courageousness in this environment that we're in. And so let's take, you and I both have military backgrounds. When we go to another country, this is not our country, right? We don't know what we don't know. But what do? Well, we become really curious. We're asking so many questions. And that kind of curiosity, people can see our heart there, right? They know we really don't know. In most countries, they're going to be like, oh, wait, they're like thrilled to see you. They're going to help you figure out where you're going or how do you say this or whatever, because they can see your heart's intent, right? So it's head and heart. And when we think about leading people, I want leaders to come in with that same curiosity. It doesn't matter what you believe or what you saw or what you read about a particular group or a different person or maybe with a person with a disability, any of that stuff. None of that stuff matters. What matters is you come in with a spirit of curiosity and you're asking questions and they are then leading you to where you should be. Not you come in with, this is how I see the world, right? And then now you just kind of shut down the conversation because people are like, well, I don't see it that way, right? So the best thing that a leader can do if you really want to be successful at this thing called leadership is you really have to meet people where they're at. And that sounds easy, but it's actually really hard, especially the longer you've been in leadership, because you're used to telling everybody what to do, right? And, kind of running the show. But the best leaders, the ones that we all remember working for, were the ones that were humble, were the ones that were vulnerable, were the ones that didn't know everything. And they were clear and open and confident enough to say that, right? One of the things I always do when I have teams that I oversee, especially if I've had to inherit the team, because I used to be, before I became a president and in the C-suite and all that stuff, I was a head of sales, right? So usually you're head of sales as a leader, you're coming in because the team's not performing well. And so they've changed out the leader. So I've inherited this team and there's all, they're a little nervous and all kinds of things because they're not performing, right? But one of the things that I would always do with that, besides the, we are each other's brothers keepers type of thing, is to make sure that when we had a goal, so let's say the board said to me, all right, Steph, the team's got to bring in $1 billion this year. Okay. And so now I'm going to meet with the team, right? Hey guys, listen, just got back with the board. Here's the new number for the year. We've got to do a 20% increase. And I'll be honest with you, I could really use your help on how we're going to do it. All right, now all of a sudden, right? Because it's not like I'm going to go out there and sell stuff, right? Like I'm the leader, right? I just got to get the result done, And now all of a sudden, what I would do, Noble, is, we have a big old whiteboard up there. Guys, any idea you have would be great, right? And so now let them throw out their ideas and we're writing everything down. What most leaders do, Noble, is one, they don't ask that question, right? I could really use your help. Two, then when people start throwing ideas, they start shutting it down. Now's not the time to shut the idea down, right? Every idea goes on that board, right? Now, as a leader, do I know there's some ideas that we're not going to be able to do that? I certainly know that, right? But now's not the time to shut it down because I've asked them for help, right? And so if I'm creating a psychologically safe environment, that means all ideas work, throw them up there. Now, when I get all the ideas, Noble, my next thing is going to be like, guys, listen, thank you so much. This is incredible. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to do all 100 ideas, right? But, what could we do? What would you say are the top 10 things that we could get accomplished this year, right? Now, I'm going to let them have a healthy debate because people will defend their ideas, right? Let them have at it. They're going to have a healthy debate on why they think this makes sense or doesn't make sense or whatever. And I'm going to let that healthy confrontation take place because that's a sign of a healthy team. Then when they've narrowed it down to 10, right? And it's like, all right, this is awesome, guys. Here's our 10. Now we got to put this in bite-sized pieces. How are we going to do it each quarter? Blah, 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 blah. And so now it's their plan. They've helped create it. And now we're all going to walk to the beat of this drum roll, right? This is the plan. This is what we're doing. And we're all going to get to that $1 billion together. But it started with me being a leader, asking for help. Not coming in guns blazing like I got all the answers, right? Just coming in going, here's where we got to get to. Now you guys help me figure out how we're going to get there.
Love that. Love that. So much in there, Steph. So, okay. I have 1,000 questions, and maybe we can do some more interviews down the road. Mm-hmm. How do we, okay. So kind of pun intended, pun intended. What final advice would you give to a leader who wants to follow in your footsteps and become a top level leader and executive, right? A C in whatever, whether it's because we have a military audience too, whether it's become a GO, a general officer, or whether it's to become C-suite one day, or even CEO, president like you. Mm-hmm. What are some advice that you might share?
Yeah, thank you for that. And so what I would say is a couple things. I did the acronym of ALLY, certainly, and that we could stop there. To get the book, and I'm not saying get the book because it's my book, but I really do feel like this is a God-inspired book, and that's why I say get the book. I'll tell you a quick story, if I may, in regards to how the book was written. So I'd gotten direction, from my speakers bureau saying, hey, people are asking for a book, you should write a book. And at the time I was a working executive, I didn't have time to write a book. And so I just remember thinking I didn't have the time. But then eventually my schedule started to free up and I had more time. And I remember just praying, okay, if I'm going to write a book, God, what kind of book would I write that could add value into the world, right? So I went away. I did something I've never done before. I went away by myself, Noble, for 5 days. So I went off the grid, no phones, no internet, no nothing. I'm in the woods by myself and just literally there so I could clear my head so I could think about what this book would be. Well, the first 3 days, unbeknownst to me, I just end up in worship the whole time. And that was not why I went there, but clearly that's what I needed. And then days 4 and 5, now I had direction for the book. Now, this book was 2 years ago, right? That, I'm writing the book 2 years ago. Who knew what we'd all be going through now? I didn't know, right? I didn't know, but, he knew clearly. And so this book is incredibly timely for leaders around the globe, because at the end of the day, it really is all about unification, right? Pulling people in. If you've got a talent or a calling and you've got the great honor of being able to lead people, or you want to one day be able to lead people, then it's not as complicated as we've sometimes led people to believe. And so that's why I make it super simple. Just if we can watch 5-year-olds on the playground and all they're doing is asking and listening and learning, and their version of taking action is, hey, you want to be my friend? You want to play with us? That's their version, right? But at the end of the day, they're executing on those things. So my point is, we already have these gifts and talents. We were born with it, right? Life beat it out of us. And so now we kind of clunky with it. And we're afraid to say the wrong thing, or what if I make a mistake? Or, one of my friends who's a neurologist had shared with me, he says the brain is constantly evolving. And so back in the caveman days, it may have been afraid of, being chased down by a tiger. But because it evolves with the system, not the system, but with what's going on with the climate, the world, everything, it's now evolved that we have a new fear. So none of us are afraid of being chased down by a lion, but what we are afraid of is rejection, right? It's been replaced with something else. We're afraid of, how will this make me look? What if I make a mistake? So it's just a new fear. The brain's just evolved to the environment that we're in. So when you think about it in those simplistic type of ways, it should give you hope, because you have every ounce of power to change it, right? And you change it by going, okay, let's say I spend time on winning, right? What's the secret to winning? The secret to winning is winning. That's the secret, right? And so, because what happens is when you win, the brain actually starts to create different chemicals that now your body wants to replicate that same feeling, right? It's an endorphin. You're feeling good. You're pumped up, that was awesome. The brain wants to repeat it. So the secret to winning really is winning, right? It's called the winning factor. That's the science behind it. And so I say all that to say the secret to being able to be a really good leader that knows how to lead all different types of people is literally jumping in full-fledged. It's a head and heart issue, being okay with, if I make a mistake, that's okay. Most likely your job somebody's going to die because of a mistake you made. So you just jump all in, because it's a head and heart issue. And so when you do it, then you're like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. That was great. Let me do it again. And let me do it again. And that's how we change this whole thing. And so one of the things that I tell people in the book, it's super simple. You expand your mind, right? How you do that is not sitting, yeah, though I love my book, it's not just reading a book that's going to expand your mind. That's one part of it, but now you still got to execute. So one way that I expand my mind, if you will, is I will go, like you and I both live in Dallas. So I just recently did this. My husband and I went to, there's a Thai neighborhood. I don't know, in there that monks kind of run this neighborhood. I'd never even heard of it before. And so, but on Sundays, what happens is the monks are floating around. You can go into their temple, and all the people from their community will come and cook. And you can go buy food, like good, authentic Thai food, and all the money goes to the proceeds of helping their nonprofits and all the things that the monks do to serve and feed the poor and so on and so forth. It's a great win-win, right? So, and I love Thai food, so I was sold at eating Thai food for $10. So I would go, and my husband and I was like, let's expand our territory, right? So we go to this, watching monks float around and eating some great food, sitting in their botanical garden, checking out their temple. I'd never been in a temple before. Like, what's the protocol? I've been in churches, but just it opens up my mind, right? And now all of a sudden I'm emerged into something where people are not like me. I'm asking questions I don't know the answer to. I'm listening. I'm learning. I'm doing my part, right? Buying some food. The money helps to go for a bigger cause. There's simple things that you can do. So I encourage leaders, don't make this some overly complicated. Start off, take your family, and on the weekend, you go into a neighborhood where that people don't look like you. Because in there's going to be cultural centers or art museums, or maybe there's a festival going on. There's definitely restaurants, right? There's things that you can do to put yourself in a predicament where you don't have all the answers. By default, it's going to make you curious. It's going to make you ask different questions, different layers of questions, making you listen differently. All of that. This is not a complicated thing. We were born for this. It's life that has made us question it. But trust me, this is the work of Jesus. Like, this is it. You know what I mean? This is not slapping people over the head with Bible verses. This is it. Like, leading people, if that's your calling, that's your goal, that's what you're called to do, then do it, and do it with a level of excellence, because your tongue can either help them or hurt them. We all know that's the reality. So make sure that you're equipping yourself so that you can be that type of leader, because every single person is going to tell a story of what it was like to be led by you. Every single one of the people, not just the people who understood you or you understood, but everybody, whoever you led will one day tell a story. You decide what that story is every day in your actions, every day with you showing up very curious, and every day showing up with courage as well to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do whatever I can do based on my gifts and talents to actually help you win, because the secret to winning is winning.
Wow. Steph, that was fire.
Is that a mic drop moment, Noble? I can get super fired up on this stuff.
that is fuego. That is amazing. So how do we find you? How do we follow you? How do we find the book? How do we connect with you? Websites, all that stuff.
Yeah, please. Thank you. So I would love to be introduced to your tribe. I love you so much. I'm like, your people got to be awesome, man. So they can go to stephaniechung.com. That will take you everywhere, but I'm also on every social media, and my call sign is at the Stephanie Chung. And yeah, I would love to be connected with them. And anybody who's a leader that's kind of coming up through the ranks and they want to understand leadership from a science perspective, as well as practical tips and tools, I have a newsletter that goes out every week, and it's called Your Ally in Leadership.com. And it's a newsletter. You can subscribe to it via my website as well. But that I'm pouring into leaders. It's totally free. And it's like, here's the science behind leadership. Here's the science behind success. Here's the science behind why you may do what you do. And how do you rewire your brain to help you be more effective, right? So,
Steph, absolutely cannot thank you enough for sharing the gifts and talents and wisdom and insights that God has invested into you, and how you have. I firmly believe you're a perfect example of, I don't remember if it's Matthew 13, but where, you have, because of your fertile soil, you have given God a 30, 60, 100-fold return. in the gifts that he's given you. And I'm grateful to be on the receiving end of some of those gifts. So thank you, Steph.
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you to say. Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, this was so fun for starters. So thanks for having me, Mr. EQ Gangsta. This was so great. I really appreciate you giving me the time.